And now a word from Premium Edition Games. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Premium Interviews. I'm your host, Barry, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. Jakub Kasztalski.
Hi, nice to see everyone.
Now, Jakub, you're with Unbound Creations, who made a phenomenal game that's part of our series 4 called Rain on Your Parade. And we want to get all into that, but first, let's let all the listeners know a little bit about you. Like, why don't you go a little bit into your background with video games, game design, and how you got started.
Hi, I'm Jakub. I'm a Polish guy who's kind of like traveled and lived all over the place. And I spent half my life in Poland and half kind of abroad, moving around. And when I kind of like settled down after my studies in America, I started actually pursuing a few things. I was doing some freelancing. I was doing actually cinematography and film. I was also working kind of on my first indie game at the time. And I remember that was back in the days where Steam had like the green light process you had to get through to be approved to sell on the platform. And I wasn't sure if I was even going to get through. And after like I think few months, we got the email that yes, the game is going to be approved. And I was like, oh snap, I'm going to be selling this game. I need a business license. I need to register an LLC, do open a bank account, all this stuff. And that kind of kick-started my game dev career. And it's kind of been a journey since then. My second game didn't do that well. It's kind of a flop. Then that kind of sent me back a little bit. My third game, Headliner, that some of you might have heard of, kind of brought me back into like doing a bit better, and that kind of funded my next game, which was sequel to that, Headliner Novi News, which did even better, and it won a few awards. It's got published on all the consoles and platforms, and even got a physical release as well at the time. And then I used that again to kind of take a break from serious and story-driven games that I've done before to do something a bit more silly and colorful. And what's more silly and colorful than being a cloud ruining everybody's day? So that's kind of what launched into Rain on Your Parade, um, which all of you guys probably know about now. So I think that's a little bit quick summary of my journey as a game developer.
That's one hell of a journey, and it's a really important lesson about don't give up, right? Life is not always going to be sugar and rainbow. Sometimes you will stumble and fall a bit, but it's important to get back up. And I'm really glad you did, and hopefully our listeners are too, because it got us this amazing game. I gotta ask, I mean, obviously you did some story driven stuff before, and this was silly and fun, but where'd you come up with this idea for Rain in Your Parade?
It was a very random thought that I had once. So at the time when I was working on the Headliner games, those are games where you play as a news editor. You decide what articles get published and which do not, and you kind of see how it influences the society around you, your friends, your coworkers, your brother. Um, and it's a game very political. It's a commentary about politics, about the state of the media and news industry. So I was following a lot of news channels. I was following a lot of politics around the time, the political debates, the presidential speeches. So watching one of those, there was also that meme about Donald Trump not being able to use an umbrella or something. So I kind of had a thought watching one of the presidential speeches, like, what if just a cloud flew in and like started raining and he can get the umbrella up and then he's like panicking and then like the cloud just starts raining on the people and they're all like, you know, panicking and throwing like chairs are flying in the air and just like complete chaos. And I was like, I can make a game out of that. And yeah, that made like a little prototype and brought it to Indicate in 2019. And people were digging it, and I was kind of like, okay, yeah, I think this has some legs. And yeah, and then it kind of went more and more into production after that.
That's awesome. I mean, it's funny where we can just get like the most random idea and turn it into gold. And your game is absolutely has a different kind of feel to it. It's like you said, it's not serious at all. It's very, very fun and comical. And I equate it into that category like Katamari Damacy and Untitled Goose Game, that really just kind of quirky, fun game. Just you could turn off your brain for a lot of it and just really have fun. But
Hmm.
at the same time, you have all the smart missions to really actually challenge your brain. But what I want to know is for you personally, and I know this, it's a child, so it's kind of hard for you to say, but or it might be hard for you to say. What do you think makes Rain Your Parade so special compared to all these other games that in the Pantheon that exist?
So for me, personally, it's kind of like a love letter to a lot of like games that I grew up with, like all the little jokes, all the references. It's kind of everything that taught me as a gamer and as a developer. And the game is kind of from the perspective of like a little kid. And I think there was definitely a bit of like letting myself be a little kid, just have fun with this game, just come up with a really, really stupid idea and spend the whole week. I would spend like a whole weekend playing games as a little kid. And I spent a whole weekend working on this level that I just had a really dumb idea, like the pigeon level where you're raining bread and then the pigeons just fly and poop on people. It was just like such a dumb idea, but it was so very like not childish, but like that like childlike wonder and sense of like silly stupid ideas, exploring that. And I think that's the most, I think, unique thing, is that just how diverse and varied is the game is, with all those references, all those jokes, all those like changing genres. There's a first person level as well. It just, you never know what's gonna happen, and it's always ridiculous. And even though you're just a cloud, there's just so much you end up doing as a cloud that you wouldn't have expected starting the game.
That I couldn't agree more, and I agree that it is special in that way. Now I gotta ask, developing this game, how did you feel versus your other previous games? Obviously a little more serious, but like what was the thought process going in? Did you, learn from your experiences prior to use here, or was this totally different in a genre that it felt like designing your first game again?
Definitely there's a learning. I think every project I make, I learn something, and I always end up reusing a bunch of code. Like there's some code that goes back to like 3 games back that I keep reusing for like managing config files, for example. um, and just general ideas how to structure things. Like the game is built in Unity, so as you make more projects, you learn the engine better, you learn its limitations. So there was some ideas I had how to structure, for instance, saving files or keeping track of game progress that I've learned from Headliner that worked really well there, or maybe some lessons. And that's from like a technical side of things. From like a gameplay side of things, that was definitely a very new experience, since a lot of my previous games, like I said, they were very more narrative, more like adventure, versus this one was, an action game effectively. You move around in real time. You have to, none of my previous games really required that much reflexes, except maybe one, but it was kind of like a first-person exploration, and that was definitely something new, but it was also exciting. Like I mentioned, I've come from like doing those serious political games, and I was just so burned out on doing that and like doing serious stuff and narrative and following politics. So it was a nice like a break that I needed to do something that's as opposite of that as possible. So like here's a bunch of text and clicking. Let's make it as little text as possible and more like action and moving stuff. So that was definitely something that was new for me, but I was definitely excited to do that and explore that space because I had never really done that before.
Makes sense, and that's really cool. It makes me want to go back and check out your other games just to see how different they are. Um, this game features something also that's new, newer in the pantheon of video games, and that's DLC. It's a relatively new thing that's only been a decade old. Uh, Rain Your Parade has DLC. So what led you to want to create the DLC?
I've one of the reasons that like I've honestly never done a DLC before, so I was like, let's see what happens. And the other big reason is that we were on Game Pass, so we already had this huge install base of users, like hundreds of thousands of people played the game at that point. So that kind of shifted my priorities from how do I acquire new players to how do I leverage the existing players we already have. And obviously, idea is like, well, let's just give them more content. And I ran a little bit of a survey that we advertised on our social channels, our newsletter, on the Steam page. to saying, basically asking like, hey, what do you guys want to see more of? And the consensus was basically people just wanted more of the same. They just want more levels, more silly adventures. So that's kind of what made me settle on like, yeah, let's just do a DLC. Let's do a bunch of fun levels. Let's do some new powers, some new achievements, all the goodies, and yeah.
Yeah, the DLC looks amazing, and it's one of the things that I'm really happy that we're able to incorporate that into the physical. So the whole game is going to be there. Now you mentioned Game Pass. Obviously, that's Microsoft, and the Switch. Ran your parades on that too. What was it like working with Microsoft and Nintendo? Like, did you notice any differences working between the two companies and Steam as well? You could throw in.
Yeah, and definitely every platform feels a little bit different, and there's only so much I can say because of NDAs. But overall, I would say it's been a good experience. It's definitely been worth it. With Game Pass, it was pleasantly very human interactions. How we negotiated and we chatted about the nitty gritty of it. So that the whole experience was definitely really great. Steam it gives you a lot of control, but it's a little bit more hands off. So it's kind of like, here's like a million checkboxes and tools. You can customize everything. So now that I've published 5 games on Steam, I know like the ins and like I know some new developers get a little bit lost of like, how do I set this up? Now that I have like that experience, it's pretty easy for me to do that and leverage the power that Steam gives you. And just being able to push an update within like an hour is also amazing. I'll have people email me a bug, and then I'll fix it like within the same day and like already push an update. So that's a great power of Steam, that iterative development. And I can also see why like early access games work really well there. And I think with Nintendo, it's a little bit of a longer process, but they do, I feel like, have good resource support where everything is a little bit more like in one place, where they're like the documentation and stuff, and it's kind of like once you get it running, it kind of runs. And even though like it requires most like technical like optimization work, like I don't have to worry about like a million different computer variations and stuff. Like once I get the game running and I know it's running well on the Switch, then I can kind of rest assured that okay, this is ready. And their team tends to be pretty communicative too about like any issues, like when you're submitting to the certification as well, what needs to be changed. So overall, yeah, it's each one, yeah, like I said, it's pros and cons of each platform. But overall, especially with our game being the colorful, silly, family-friendly game, definitely Switch and Game Pass were the right choices for us. I think in some ways even more than Steam, where it's a lot more about simulation, roguelike strategy. That's kind of like what the average Steam user wants.
I could see that. It's interesting because they all have different, behind the scenes how they work. So now Rainier Parade is done. It's complete. The DLC is complete. What's next for you? What's going to be project number 6? Anything you're thinking about or working on yet?
So there are a few things that are kind of on my mind. Like one thing that I am prototyping right now, it's a very kind of like a spiritual successor to Rainy Parade. And it's a game where you play as a crow and you fly around, you poop on people, and then you steal their gold coins. So it's another like very silly game. And there's a few other ideas that I have on my mind that are kind of going back to the serious games, a bit more like headliners, some commentary stuff, but nothing concrete I have there yet. I've been kind of taking a little bit of a break right now, dealing with some like personal things and also just some other options like working on the physical release with you guys. So nothing yet that I can officially announce at this time.
Fair enough. At least something is in the pipeline. That Crow game sounds amazing. So speaking of games, this is something I ask every single developer I've talked with. It's just a question. It's just a blanket question that I love to do because I love to hear the responses. And so I'm going to ask it to you. If the phone were to ring right now or right after this interview, and you picked it up, which company would you like to be on the other end telling you that you get to work on the next game in whatever series? What game would you like them to tell you? You could do the next one right now.
I don't know if that's an answer you expect, but I don't think any in particular because I want to stick to my own ideas. Like there's a lot of other games I love and I like appreciate and like I'll binge play for hours. But for my own stuff, I do kind of want to stick to doing independent things and exploring my own ideas. So I'm not sure if I would want to go and work for another big IP at this point right now, honestly.
You know what? That's You're the first person to ever tell me that, and I gotta applaud it. That is an awesome answer. I gotta ask you, what would you ask or what would you tell the users? Like all the people who are gonna be buying your game who may have played the game already, who are on the fence about the physical and saying, "Oh, um, should I buy it? Should I not?" What would your message be to them?
Um, well, thank you even for considering it, and thank you for supporting us. Especially being an independent studio, it's always harder to push through. Like I said, we don't have like big publishers, we don't have funding, so it's always we're doing well now, but it's like, well, will we do next we do well next project? What if our sales die down and like now I have to like scramble to come up with something. I've definitely been in positions like I mentioned starting out when I was freelancing. That was kind of like my day job, and I was kind of waiting. My second game was a flop, so knowing that people are interested and considering and uh, supporting us, even though we're doing okay now, that we're still seeing that support and that we can count on it. It's definitely very meaningful and reassuring that okay, I can keep doing this as my real job, as my full-time job, as I have been for the past yeah, I think only the past like 2-3 years is when I kind of made that shift to like, oh wait, this is actually what my real income comes from. I no longer need to like freelance on the side. So having that reassurance that there are people who are supporting us, uh, and also from like a creative standpoint, as that's I am the founder and I'm the creative director. So knowing that people love the game enough to like get it again, to get the physical release, or do you want all the swag, they want all the pins, all the cool things, knowing that is also so creatively fulfilling that like I really created something people appreciate and want. So both on that, the business and the creative side, it just means so much to me and our whole team really.
That is a very, very powerful message. And hopefully, all of you out there like what you heard and want to know more about Jakub. And if you want to, we have a couple places they can find you. You can find you on Twitter at Unbound Creation. So, definitely follow there. You can go to unboundcreations.com for more on all the projects. Facebook.com/Unbound Creations, and TikTok at Unbound Creations as well. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join me for this little talk and talking with all the wonderful supporters we have.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Actually, those are some great questions. I enjoyed that. And again, thank you everyone for playing, for watching, for being interested, for asking us questions, for sharing, for everything. Thank you for playing games.
Well, thank you. And for everybody, remember, Brand New Parade is part of Series 4. You can get it available right now until June 10th at premiumeditiongames.com. The retro and the standard premiums are still available. So thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time, and have a great day.
See ya.